Zack Snyder's Justice League is a 4-hour cut of the 2017 film directed by Joss Whedon. Now I'll go quickly into the backstory of this film. Years ago, the DC film universe was largely being steered by Zack Snyder. He was responsible for Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman. Justice League in 2017 was the next step in his vision for a cinematic DC story spanning over various movies. Unfortunately, Snyder had to leave the project because his daughter tragically passed away from committing suicide. The studio then had to make a decision with the film and brought on Whedon, who famously directed the first two Avengers films, to finish the post production. Whedon did way more than just edit the film that Snyder made. Instead, he opted to do intensive reshoots, which resulted in an entirely different film being released. Which brings us to the fan reaction of his cut. You see, Zack Snyder has a huge fan base that loves his style of filmmaking, and they felt robbed of seeing his vision for this film. Which, if you think about it, is understandable considering that he shot over 4 hours of footage that could have been used. Now, this created the internet sensation that was hashtag release the Snyder Cut. The demand for this was so high, it allowed Snyder to get a new budget from Warner Brothers to actually finish his cut of the film. Now, of course, it is wonderful that Snyder was able to release the film that he intended to put out. This cut is far superior to the studio version, and this is a win really for creatives everywhere because it's a prime example of not giving up on your vision for anything. So this was certainly justice for Zack Snyder, but there's someone else that this film brought a lot of justice to, and that person is Ray Fisher. Fisher played Victor Stone, or Cyborg, in the film, and his character really had very little to do in the 2017 cut, which was odd because if you know anything about DC Comics, Cyborg is integral to this particular style of Justice League story, and he's been featured in so many forms of animation in the past, he's not a new character to most fans. And we now know why his role was cut so significantly. Apparently, it was an executive decision from Warner Brothers to not have him at the center of the film, and Whedon was one of the main players in that decision. This culminated into an investigation conducted by Warner Brothers into the making of this film and the mistreatment that Fisher and others felt on set with Whedon. Here are some tweets from Fisher detailing his thoughts on this. Apparently, some folks at Warner Media think that a room full of executives saying we can't have an angry black man at the center of the movie and then reducing/removing all black and POC from that movie isn't racist. Odd. The investigators hired by Warner Media was brought on to help the company assess and evade legal liabilities, continually touting her status as a former federal judge in an attempt to sway public opinion is obvious and desperate. She's now simply a lawyer. As I've said, people will attempt to shift blame completely to Joss Whedon for the Justice League reshoots. And he names a list of other people that are heavily involved in the decision making in DC and Warner Brothers, with Johns working directly with Joss on restructuring the script based on the execs' convos. Furthermore, there really was nothing that Walter did against Ray. In fact, he offered him a role in the Flash movie. And Walter happens to be a person of color, so he knows what that feels like. Are the absolute definition of tone deaf. Final thought for now, rather than trying to convince people on what the Justice League investigation didn't find, how about you start telling them what it did? The public is a lot smarter than what you're giving them credit for. The proof is there, more soon. Now, a lot of this controversy surrounding the film was public knowledge for a lot of us for a few years now. But when watching the Snyder Cut, I realized truly that a collective group in power attempted to silence Fisher, a black man, not only publicly, but creatively as well. He has spoken about how passionate he was in this role and how important it was for people to see him as this character. Now, when the original cut released, Black Panther was just a few months away, and we now know how much that did for black superheroes on screen. I bring that up to say that Hollywood understands now the power and money that can come from black heroes on the silver screen. So there's no excuse to sideline us anymore. Even at that point in time, they should have known better. It's also interesting that in the process of altering Snyder's film, they intentionally removed the sole black hero to shorten the runtime. We've actually seen this a lot recently. The other most notable example being John Boyega's role in the Star Wars trilogy. And side note, I'm still incredibly mad at Disney for tricking me into thinking that a black Jedi was going to lead the franchise. And I fully believe they knew what they were doing by baiting black people with posters like this one before the trilogy even started. So, this trend in Hollywood is essentially a microcosm of the black experience in America, showing us what it feels like to be belittled, replaced, and told to stay in the lane that we've created for you. So, I applaud Fisher because he was one of the first and largest champions of releasing the Snyder Cut. And Snyder deserves credit too for centering the story of a black man in this film, when it would have been easier for him to center it around, let's say, Batman or Wonder Woman. And the essence of Cyborg's character is that he is given a second chance from his father by saving his life with robotics. This film gives Ray Fisher that same second chance. Today, superhero roles or big budget films in general often propel a person's career to the next level. And if we were able to see Fisher's full talent on display back in 2017, imagine the opportunities he'd have today. You see, I finished the Snyder Cut wanting to see more of him. He was phenomenal in the emotional scenes of the film, and you could tell that this was more than just a role to him, and he proved that by being a part of this movement over the last few years. It's one thing for a studio to release a bad film. It's another thing entirely when that is purposely done at the expense of a black actor in the form of racism. If you haven't seen the film or had no interest in it before, please watch it because at its heart, it is a character driven film centered around Cyborg and Fisher's work and the message he wanted to get across about the human experience through his role deserves to be seen the way it was intended. And Fisher should, of course, be commended not only for standing up for himself, but for standing up for all of us despite the adversity that he faced. And to me, that is the true mark of a hero, allowing him to transcend anything he ever did as Cyborg. But what did you guys think of the film? Comment below and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you on the next one.